In this video, I'm absolutely buzzing to talk about a topic that's close to my heart: critical thinking in everyday life. And what better way to dive into it than by discussing some of my favorite books on the subject. If you're like me and you love to dissect ideas and challenge your own assumptions, these books will be right up your alley.
We're going to talk about 5 absolute gems that not only sharpen your mind, but also help you see the world in a whole new light.
So grab a cuppa, get comfy, and let's dive in. Alright, so the first book on the list, and this one is my personal favorite, is Factfulness.
10 Reasons We're Wrong About the World and Why Things Are Better Than You Think by Rosling.
Now, let me tell you, this book is an absolute game changer. When I was reading the book for the first time, I kept thinking, wow, my approach to understanding the world is really close to what Rosling's talking about.
The promise of Factfulness is pretty straightforward. We tend to have a bleak view of the world, but in reality, things are often much better than we think. Rosling argues that our brains are hardwired to focus on the negative, things like conflict, crisis, and disaster, because that's what's most immediate and alarming. But when you actually look at the data, there's a lot of progress happening that we tend to overlook. What I love about this book is how Rosling breaks down these complex ideas into 10 instincts, like the fear instinct, the size instinct, and the blame instinct, to name a few. He uses real-world examples, engaging stories, and plenty of data to back off his points. The structure is brilliant because it's easy to follow, and you can see how each instinct plays out in your own thinking. Plus, Rosling's tone is so optimistic. It's like he's showing you that it's okay to be wrong, as long as you're willing to learn and adjust your perspective. One thing I'd say though is that while the book is very accessible, it can sometimes feel it's oversimplifying issues. Rosling's goal is to make the data understandable for everyone, but in doing so, some nuances might get lost. But honestly, that's a small quibble. That we need to base our understanding of the world on facts rather than fears is incredibly powerful and relevant, especially today. So, if you haven't already, I highly recommend giving Factfulness a read. It's one of the books that will not only make you feel more informed, but also hopeful about the future.
How did you find the video so far? If you found it useful, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Alright, next up we've got The Demon Haunted World.
Science as a Candle in the Dark by Sagan.
Now, if you're into critical thinking, you've probably heard of this one. It's a classic.
Sagan is one of those authors who just has this way of making science feel like the most awe-inspiring thing in the universe. In this book, Sagan takes on a really crucial topic: the importance of science and rational thinking in a world that's often dominated by superstition and pseudoscience. The book's structure is a mix of essay and personal reflections, and Sagan is basically making the case that scientific thinking is the best tool we have to separate truth from nonsense. One of the key ideas Sagan explores is what he calls the Baloney Detection Kit. This is essentially a set of tools to help you evaluate the reliability of information. Things like checking sources, looking for evidence, and being aware of logical fallacies. It's a bit like a modern-day skeptic's toolbox, and it's absolutely invaluable. What I find particularly interesting is how Sagan balances his love for science with a deep concern for the way misinformation can spread when critical thinking is in short supply. He's not just preaching about the wonders of science, he's genuinely worried about how easily people can be misled, especially by the things that appeal to our emotions or biases. However, one thing to keep in mind is that The Demon Haunted World is published in the mid-90s, so some of the examples might feel a bit dated, but I believe the underlying principles are timeless. It's a book that makes you appreciate the beauty of skepticism, not as cynicism, but as a kind of intellectual integrity. Sagan wants us to be curious, to ask questions, and to never stop learning. So, if you're looking for a book that will ignite your passion for science and critical thinking, this one's a must-read. And who knows, it might even give you a fresh perspective on some of the things that you take for granted.
Alright, let's move on to something a bit more specific, but equally important.
How to Lie with Statistics by Darrell Huff. Now, this book is a bit older, having been published in the 1950s, but don't let that fool you. It's still incredibly relevant today, especially in a world where we're constantly bombarded with data and statistics. Huff's books is all about how statistics can be manipulated to mislead people. The structure is quite clever. Each chapter focuses on a different way that numbers can be twisted to tell a particular story. Huff goes through everything from misleading averages to the way graphs can be designed to exaggerate trends. It's written in a very accessible, almost playful style, which makes it a quick read. But don't be deceived by its brevity, this book packs a punch. The main idea here is that statistics are incredibly powerful, but they're also incredibly easy to misuse. Huff gives you the tools to spot when someone's trying to pull the wool over your eyes with fancy numbers. And I think that's something we all need to be aware of, especially when it comes to the news, politics, or even advertising. One of the book's strengths is how it makes you realize that critical thinking isn't just about logic or philosophy. It's about being savvy in the face of data. But if I have to critique it, I'd say that since the book is quite old, some of the examples might feel a bit out of date, and it doesn't really address more modern statistical methods. Still, the principle Huff lays out are timeless, and the book's humor and insight make it a valuable read for anyone interested in the mechanics of persuasion. So if you want to learn how to see through the numbers and avoid being duped by dubious statistics, this book is a fantastic resource.
Now let's talk about the next book, Being Wrong.
Adventures in the Margin of Error by Kathryn Schulz. This book is a fascinating exploration of something that, let's face it, we all experience but don't really like to admit: being wrong. Schulz's book is structured around the idea that we are all wrong, a lot more often than we think, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. She explores the psychological, cultural, and even philosophical aspects of error, and she does so in a way that's both deep and accessible. The main thrust of her argument is that being wrong is an integral part of the human experience, and instead of shying away from it, we should embrace it as an opportunity to learn and grow. What I really appreciate about this book is how Schulz challenges the notion that being wrong is something to be ashamed of. Instead, she frames it in a natural and even beneficial part of life. Her writing is incredibly engaging, with lots of stories, anecdotes, and research to back up her points. The book also delves into how our fear of being wrong can lead to some pretty irrational behavior, which is something we all need to be aware of if we're trying to think more critically. However, one downside is that the book can feel a bit meandering at times. Schulz's style is more exploratory than structured. So if you're someone who prefers a more straightforward approach, this might be a bit of a slow burn. But honestly, that's part of the charm. Being wrong isn't just about critical thinking, it's about understanding the human condition in all its flawed, beautiful complexity. So if you're interested in a book that will make you question your assumptions and embrace your mistakes, Being Wrong is definitely worth a read. It's one of those books that stays with you long after you've turned the last page. And finally, we've got the book Crucial Conversations: Tools for Talking When Stakes Are High by Kerry, Patterson, Grenny, McMillan, and Switzler. Now, this book is a bit different from the others on the list. It's less about abstract thinking and more about practical communication skills. But trust me, it's just as important. The book is structured around the idea that there are moments in life when the stakes are high, whether it's in a personal relationship, at work, or in a social setting, and how you handle those conversations can have a massive impact on the outcome. The authors provide a step-by-step guide to navigating these tricky situations, focusing on things like staying calm, expressing your views clearly, and crucially, listening to the other person. One of the key ideas in Crucial Conversations is that the best way to handle a difficult conversation is to create a safe space where everyone feels comfortable sharing their views. This might sound simple, but in practice, it's incredibly challenging, especially when emotions running high. The book gives you tools to keep the conversation productive and focused on finding solutions rather than escalating conflict.
What I like about this book is how actionable it is.
The authors don't just talk about the theory behind good conversation. They give you concrete strategies you can use right away. However, one thing to keep in mind is that the book is very much geared towards a business or professional setting, so some of the examples might feel a bit corporate if you're looking to apply these ideas in your personal life. But the principles are universal, and with a bit of tweaking, you can use them in any context. So if you want to improve your communication skills and handle tough conversations with more confidence, Crucial Conversation is a fantastic resource. So there you have it, 5 incredible books that will not only help you think more critically, but also give you practical tools to navigate the complexities of everyday life. Each one offers something unique, from understanding the world through data and science, to improving your communication skills, and embracing the inevitability of being wrong.
If you found this video interesting, I think you'll love this one right here. Click on it to keep learning, and I'll see you there. Cheers.